My name is Muhammad Ryan Hidayat, and this is my video of Project 1 for subject Social Linguistics. And for the Project 1, I will do two parts. In the first part, I have to present a presentation with the topic given, and for the part 1 for the presentation, I choose the topic diglossia and dialect. First, I will present the diglossia first. So first, what is diglossia? Diglossia refers to a situation where two varieties of the same language exist side by side within a single speech community, each serving different social functions. The term was first introduced by Charles Ferguson in 1959. There are two varieties in diglossia, or there are two types varieties in diglossia. First, we have high, and then we have low, or we have H or L varieties. The high variety is typically associated with the more educated and elite members of society. It is often characterized by a complex and grammatically correct structure, a larger vocabulary, and a more formal tone. It is used in formal situations such as education, literature, and media, where precision and clarity are valued. On other hand, low variety is the more informal form of the language. It is usually associated with less educated and less elite members of society. It has a simpler grammatical structure, a smaller vocabulary, and a more relaxed tone. It is used in everyday communication among family and friends, where familiarity and informality are valued. Here's when we use the H variety or L variety. In H variety, we use in the context in education, government, news, political speech, and religion. Meanwhile, in L variety, we use in casual communication, daily communication, conversation with friends, and conversation with family. Here's the examples for diglossia. First, we have example in Indonesian. The example in Indonesian, there are sentence, saya tidak mengerti penjelasan tersebut, for high variety. And for the low variety, we have, gua nggak ngerti itu. The two sentences has the same meaning. The meaning is, I don't understand that. It has same meaning but different language use, because the first one used in the different context. The first one is used in the educating context, so we have to use the high variety diglossia or the high variety language. But in low variety, because it's more informal than the first one, we don't have to use or talk like the first one. We use more simpler vocabulary, like gua nggak ngerti itu. It's simpler than the first one, because in the context is, it says in the talking with friends or family or the close friend maybe. Next example in English. The first example is, or the high variety is, I regret to inform you that your application has been unsuccessful. Meanwhile, in informal English, it has less vocabulary, less vocabulary word, like sorry you didn't get a job. In the low variety, the two sentences have the same meaning, but different language usage. Because in the first sentence is talking in the more official context, like for like the job interview, it has to use the high variety language. Meanwhile, in informal language, it don't have to use the more formal. So we just say, sorry, you didn't get a job. This context, we can use this sentence in the context when we, as a friends of, when we have a friend and we have a, maybe let's say the company, and we offer the job to the friends, but the friend didn't pass the interview. So we can just say, sorry, you didn't get a job, because it's only a friends, not a formal like big company like that. Okay, so next we have diglossia versus code switching. Diglossia is often confused with code switching, but they operate at different levels. Diglossia is a societal pattern where the whole community agrees, often unconsciously, on which variety belongs in which context. Code switching is on individual behavior where a speaker alternates between languages or varieties within a single conversation. Both can exist in same community at the same time, but diglossia is rule governed at the social level, while code switching is more fluid, spontaneous, and personal. So diglossia is more, it's like the strict rules that we have to obey uh, the language usage in the different contexts. In the formal context like education or political speech or religion, we have to use the age variety. Meanwhile, in the informal, we don't have to use the age variety. We often use the L variety to make the conversation easier or smoother. And the code switching is more spontaneous and personal. That is the differences between diglossia and code switching. Okay, so that's for my topic one, diglossia, and next we jump to the topic two, dialect. Okay, for the next topic is dialect, and I will do the presentation. Okay, so first, what is dialect? A dialect is a variety of language used by a particular group of speakers. People who speak different dialects still use the same language, but they may pronounce words differently or use different vocabulary and grammar. For example, English spoken in America and English spoken in Britain are both English, but they have some differences in pronunciation and word choice.
Ready? Water. Water. Bottle. Bottle. Bottle of water. A bottle of water.
Next, we have the characteristic of dialects. Dialects have several characteristics that make them different from one another. A dialect is usually connected to a certain region, community, or social group. It may have unique pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar patterns. Even though dialects are different, speakers can usually still understand each other because they belong to the same language system. For example, British people say flat and Americans say apartment. These two words, flat and apartment, have same meaning but different vocabulary. In the British, people say flat. In Americans, people say apartment. Next, we have types of dialect. There are two common types of dialect: regional dialect and social dialect. Regional dialect is influenced by geographic area. People from different places may speak the same language differently. For example, American English and British English. Social dialect is influenced by social factors such as age, occupation, education, or social class. For example, when we look at the kids these days, or people say Gen Alpha maybe, they often say the new word like skibidi, riz, or sigma. Uh, For example, we look at the skibidi. Skibidi in for Gen Z for Gen Alpha means something bad. So maybe we can see the sentence like that, like this. Oh, that's content was skibidi. Like, oh, it has the same meaning. Like, wow, the content was bad. The content was awful. The content was weird. It has the same meaning, but the skibidi is often used in Gen Alpha, or yeah, that's why age is one of the factors for dialects in social dialect. Okay, here's the example of English dialect. English has many dialects around the world. One common example is the difference between British English and American English. As the slide before, as as the example in the slide before, English and American British English have different vocabulary use. For example, here you can see in British English they say flat, and American English they say apartment. In British English they say lift, and American English they say elevator. In British English they say holiday. In American English they say vacation. In British English they say lorry. In American English they say truck. Like I live in a flat. I live in apartment. These dialects are still mutually understandable, even though they use different vocabulary. So, the British English and American English have different vocabulary. Even though it's different vocabulary, but it still has the same meaning as it does. Like flat and apartment are the same, live and leisure are the same, holiday and vacation are the same, lorry and truck are the same. But what makes what makes that difference is who say the words. British says British people, or British people say what, and American English say what. Okay. And here's the example of Indonesian dialect. Indonesia has many dialects because it has many ethnic groups and local languages. Different regions may speak Indonesian in different ways. Here's a sample for Jakarta dialect. Gua mau pergi sekarang. And in standard Indonesian, they say saya ingin pergi sekarang. So it's a different language use, or it's different dialect. For Jakarta, they say gua mau pergi sekarang, and for the formal Indonesian or the standard Indonesian, they say saya ingin pergi sekarang. It has the same meaning as the standard Indonesian, but because people in Jakarta say differently, it creates dialect. So most people in Jakarta say gua mau pergi sekarang instead of saya ingin pergi sekarang, because it's the dialect, the Jakarta dialect. And there are more examples in sentences, examples dialect sentences in Indonesia. There are much more sentences, or there are much more examples. Yeah. The Jakarta dialect is commonly used in casual conversation, while standard Indonesian is used in formal situations such as school and government communication. Okay, dialect versus accent. People often confuse what the differences between dialect and accent. Okay, so an accent only affects pronunciation, while a dialect affects pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar. For example, two people may say the same sentence with different pronunciation. This is an accent difference. However, if they also use different grammar or vocabulary, it becomes a dialect difference. Example, The first sentence says, he ain't coming. And the second sentence said, or in the standard English, says, he isn't coming. Yeah, in summary, dialect is broader than accent because dialects cover pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar, while the accent only cover the pronunciation. Okay. And next, dialect versus diglossia. Diglossia refers to the use of two language varieties that have different social functions. Usually, one variety is considered formal or high, while the other is informal or low. Speakers choose the variety depending on the situation. Meanwhile, a dialect is a variation of a language used by a particular regional or social group. Dialects differ in pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar, but they are not necessarily divided into formal and informal functions. Okay. Importance of dialect. Dialects are important because they show cultural identity and social background. A person's dialect can reflect where they come from and the community they belong to. Dialects also enrich language diversity and help linguists study language development, culture, and society. Today, many researchers study dialects to understand how language changes over time. Here's a summary. So, dialect is a variation of language used by certain groups or regions. Dialects may differ in pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar. They still belong to the same language. There are regional dialects and social dialects. Dialects are important because they reflect identity, culture, and communication patterns in society. Okay, so that's for my presentation for part one, and I will do the part two. Okay, so here's my video of project one part two. In the part two, I will solve the 6 cases that are given, and so let's get started. So first, okay, so for the case one, the case is in a university seminar, a student presents using formal Indonesian. However, during the discussion session, the same student switches to a more informal variety when interacting with peers. Meanwhile, the lecturer consistently uses normal Indonesian throughout the session. This case is example of diglossia. Diglossia is a social linguistic situation where two language varieties are used in different social contexts. In this case, the student uses formal Indonesian during the seminar presentation because the academic setting requires professionalism and seriousness, while informal Indonesian is used during peer discussion to create a relaxed atmosphere. The lecturer consistently uses formal Indonesian to maintain authority and academic identity. According to Charles A. Ferguson in 1959, diglossia involves the use of high variety in formal situations and a low variety in informal situations. Joshua Fisherman 1967 further explains that language varieties are distributed according to social domains such as education and friendship. This phenomenon helps speakers adapt communication according to context, audience, and social expectations. Next, for the case 2, the case is like during a group discussion, students frequently mix Indonesian and English. One student says, menurut saya, this concept is very important untuk kita pahami, while another responds in full English, but later switches back to Indonesian when speaking to another peer. This is the example of code alternation, style shifting, code mixing, and code switching. The interaction among students demonstrates several social linguistic phenomena, including code alternation, code mixing, code switching, and style shifting. The sentence, menurut saya, this concept is very important untuk kita pahami, is an example of code mixing because Indonesian and English are combined in one utterance. Another student speaks fully in English before turning to Indonesian, which shows code switching. According to John J. Gompers in 1982, bilingual speakers alternate languages to clarify meaning and adapt to interactional context. Sana Poplak in 1980 states that bilingual speakers frequently alternate between languages to express identity and social relationships. These practices help speakers communicate effectively while also expressing bilingual competence and solidarity. Next, in case 3, the case is a student speaks very formally when presenting in front of the class, but becomes highly informal when talking to close friends after class. The vocabulary, tone, and sentence structure change significantly depending on the audience. This is the example of style shifting phenomenon. The style shifting occurs when speakers change their speaking style depending on audience, settings, or communicative purpose. In this case, the student uses formal language during the classroom presentation because the situation requires professionalism, politeness, and clarity. After class, the student becomes highly informal when speaking with close friends, using casual vocabulary and relaxed tone. According to William Leboeuf in 1972, speakers pay more attention to speech in formal situations than in casual conversations. Alan Bell in 1984 explains through audience design theory that speakers adjust their language style according to their audience style. According to their audience, style shiftings allow speakers to express identity, maintain social relationships, and communicate appropriately in different contexts. Next, for the case 4, the case is like in a casual conversation, a student says, "Aku lagi ngerjain assignment yang deadline-nya besok, jadi harus cepat selesai." The sentence combines elements from Indonesian and English within the same utterance. This is the example of the code mixing phenomenon. The code mixing is the use of elements from different languages within the same sentence or utterance. The sentence, "Aku lagi ngerjain assignment yang deadline-nya besok, jadi harus cepat selesai," combines Indonesian structure with English vocabulary, such as assignment and deadline. According to Peter Muysken in 2000, code mixing commonly appears in bilingual communities where languages interact frequently. Charlotte Hoffman in 1991 explained that bilingual speakers mix codes because certain words or expressions are more familiar or practical in one language. In this context, English academic terms sound modern and efficient. Code mixings also help speakers express bilingual identity and create informal interaction among peers. For the next case, the case is during a class discussion, a student begins speaking in Indonesian but switches entirely to English when explaining a concept, then return to Indonesian when giving sample. This phenomena is called code switching. Code switching refers to changing from one language to another during communication. In the classroom discussion, the student begins speaking in Indonesian, switches entirely to English when explaining a concept, and then returns to Indonesian while giving samples. The shift occurs because English is often associated with academic explanation and technical vocabulary, while Indonesian helps maintain audience understanding and social closeness. According to John J. Gompers, 1982, code switching functions as a conversational strategy that helps speakers convey meaning and social identity. Shana Poplak in 1980 also states that code switching is common in bilingual communities and reflects speakers' linguistic competence. This phenomenon allows speakers to emphasize information, adapt to topic changes, and communicate it more effectively. For the last case, the case is students from different regions in Indonesia interact in the classroom. Some use standard Indonesian, while others incorporate regional dialect features such as pronunciation, vocabulary, or intonation. This phenomenon is called dialect. Dialect refers to language variation influenced by regional or social background. In this classroom interaction, students from different regions in Indonesia use standard Indonesian while also incorporating regional pronunciation, vocabulary, and intonation. These differences occur because speakers bring linguistic features from their local communities into communication. According to Peter Trotkill in 2000, dialect variation dialect eh, reflects regional identity and social background. Ronald Wyrdhoff in 2015 explains that dialect differences are a natural result of geographic and social separation. Dialects help speakers express cultural identity, create solidarity, and maintain local linguistic tradition within broader communication. Okay, so that's for my problem, for six case study that I solved. And here are the references list that I use for support my argument. Okay, so that's all for my video of my project one for subject social linguistic. Thank you for watching.